Welcome to Northlandia, a place to bring your curiosity because here you'll find curiosities. I'm Wyatt Buckner with the Duluth News Tribune, and I will be your guide as we discover the unique and fascinating stories here in the Northland. Here we celebrate the region's distinctive people, places, and history. In this episode, we visit the Grand Marais coffee shop that's connecting the community with weather reports. Let's venture forth into Northlandia.
Good morning, my friends. Happy Thursday to you all. And what a morning it has already been. Beautiful day down here in Grand Marais. Windy out of the east right now, about 48 degrees. Sunshine all day long.
This is just one example of the daily weather reports by Sarah Jorgensen Hellberg, manager of Java Moose Espresso Cafe, and some might say an unofficial spokesperson for Grand Marais. Joining me on this journey up the North Shore is arts and entertainment reporter Jay Gabler, finally back from leave. Jay, welcome back to Northlandia. We've sorely missed you here.
Well, thank you, Wyatt. I've enjoyed listening to the podcast while I was on leave and glad to be back.
And what better way to bring you back in the Northlandia than to venture up to what I personally maybe consider a possible contender for capital of Northlandia, that being Grand Marais. We last went up there just over a year ago, last April, when we went into Drury Lane Books. That's episode 9 of the podcast. Even back on that one, you mentioned how you believe that Grand Marais is to Duluth like Duluth is to the Twin Cities.
And as the Twin Cities are and the greater state of Minnesota to America. You keep going north, you keep getting a little bit more isolated, a little bit closer to nature, and a little bit further off the beaten path, as we say here in Northlandia, the closer you get to Grand Marais.
And in your experiences going to Grand Marais, were you familiar with the Java Moose Espresso Cafe prior to us going there for that specific reason?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really can't miss Java Moose when you visit Grand Marais for just about any reason. It's right there in the middle of town. It's right there on the main drag. And after a long road trip, what do you want? You want a cup of coffee. And there it is. So I've definitely stopped at Java Moose many times before. Now, my history in Grand Marais doesn't go back super far. I don't remember spending much time, if any, in Grand Marais when I was living in Duluth as a kid. So I've really just started going up to Grand Marais over the past several years since being with my spouse, whose family has spent a lot of time up there, so we've started going up more often, and then of course for work here at the News Tribune. So as far as I've known in my experiences in Grand Marais over the past several years, Java Moose has always been there at the heart of the Grand Marais community. But in fact, as I learned for this story, like every business, it had an origin story, and it goes back just over 30 years.
Originally, I worked in the coffee shop for the original owners, and it was located across the harbor. If you've been a long-time Grand Marais visitor, you've seen that other little location. So I started there when I was in high school, and my parents actually bought the little coffee shop in 1999. And we're currently standing outside of our main location, which we've had since 2002. My parents, Ann and Gary, still retain ownership, and then my sister, Becca, and I, along with about 20 employees, run the shop for them.
And similar to you, Jay, I didn't really have much experience in Grand Marais growing up. As much as I love Grand Marais, I'm also kind of a recent visitor of Grand Marais. I only started going up there for work purposes when I started working in news back in 2019, and fell in love with it instantly. And I've also has been my go-to place for coffee, either to or from a story gather up there. I was very sad when Bear Grease didn't happen this year, so that took another trip off up to Grand Marais off my calendar for the year. And as good as the coffee shop is there, that's not exactly why we went up there per se this time around. We're actually here talking more so about their Instagram, which at the top of the podcast, that weather report you heard was pulled from Java Moose's Instagram page.
Yeah, Sarah Jorgensen Hellberg has been making almost daily videos and posting them to social media, just all of them to Instagram and then a few to other platforms as well, where she sort of steps outside the front door of the coffee shop, or could be somewhere else in Grand Marais occasionally, sometimes inside the coffee shop, and talks about this, that, the other thing. Often we'll talk about specials in the shop, new merch they have, that sort of thing, as you do when you're promoting your coffee shop, but most often touches on the weather, offers a view of what's going on, typically just turns the camera back on herself. So you see her standing out there in the weather. So you get to see her reacting to whatever the weather conditions are, which sometimes are absolutely gorgeous, sometimes are very adverse. And she just shares a little bit about what the weather looks like right down there on the shore of the Grand Marais Harbor by Java Moose.
Mm-hmm. One of the ones that I pulled for the video portion of this story was when the weather wasn't so grand. It was, I believe, during like a snowstorm when it was wintry and blustering. I think she even said something in it to the effect of like, "Welcome to beautiful Grand Marais. Well, maybe this isn't beautiful for everybody," or something to that effect, you know? But she's out there like with her phone out there experiencing the weather and showing it.
Yeah, in fact, what got her started doing almost daily videos reporting on the weather were conditions that were the opposite of beautiful, were in fact dangerous, and she felt the need to connect with the community and explain what was going on at that time.
In 2021, there was a high fire danger here along the North Shore, and the Forest Service was very busy fighting the fires and maybe couldn't get all the information out as quickly as we now want in 24-hour news service. So what I decided to kind of take on was, and they did not ask me to, maybe they didn't even want me to, I don't know, was more so just to kind of just share air quality. That was a big thing for us, and just sort of to reassure people that the entire shore was not on fire. I think so often, you guys are great, but sometimes things can feel a little sensationalized in the news at times, or you only get 5 seconds to say something. Well, I actually get more time to show you on the ground, yes, we have smoke danger, or no, we don't, it's cleared up. And that just sort of kind of rolled into reporting every day.
And obviously now we're here like 3 years later. Now she does it beyond just, you know, the fire danger smoke alert, although unfortunately we're still in a period where that's still a concern. Just prior to recording this episode, one of our recent weather reports is again about the air quality up there, so unfortunately same rhyme and dance, we're now back 3 years later still talking about air quality to a certain extent, even after we just had a bunch of rain. So I guess that's just going to keep coming back around maybe.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case. But yeah, she has followers now from as close as a couple blocks away. Wyatt, you and I met a couple of the regular customers who are Grand Marais locals. And in fact, one of them lives just a couple blocks away. But she said, you know, sometimes conditions, you know, given Lake Superior and the harbor effect can be different right down on the water compared to even what they are just a couple blocks away, let alone further up the hill or in a different spot on the shore or over the hill or up on, you know, the Gunflint Trail or what have you. And so there are people in town who watch to see what things are like down there on the water. And then, of course, you've got people here in Duluth, across the Northland, the shore, the Twin Cities, people here in Minnesota who maybe have been to Grand Marais, would like to go to Grand Marais, have fond memories, are sort of connecting with that town and that setting, and are among the devoted followers of Java Moose now on social media. But she posts a lot of these videos as reels on Instagram, which has a function of, you know, video discovery, sort of like TikTok, where you start scrolling through reels and it'll recommend other reels to you. And so she's actually getting discovered by people who not only maybe haven't been to Grand Marais or to their coffee shop, but actually don't even realize initially where it is, which is kind of an interesting testament to just how striking the landscape along the lake is, that people will see her videos and not even be sure where in the country she is, or even whether she's on a lake or an ocean.
Someone's like, I had posted something, the waves on the East Bay, and the person was like, what East Bay? I'm like, Grand Marais, Minnesota. And they were like, oh, I thought you were on the East Coast. So Superior does not look like a lake. I mean, I think that's right there. They thought they were looking at the ocean.
I mean, just to highlight the expansive reach that they have, I mean, checking right now, their Instagram appears to have over 23,000 followers versus the population Grand Marais is just over like 1,300. So that's well over 17 times like the number of followers versus the actual population of Grand Marais. So clearly they stretch far beyond the Grand Marais area.
Yeah, and you know, there are plenty of great businesses in Grand Marais that people have a lot of fond associations with. And so I checked some of the other local businesses' social media followings, and you know, typically they'll have 2,000-3,000 people following them. And yeah, so Java Moose has achieved 10 times that, which is a testament to the work that Sarah is putting in. And she did say, by the way, that although she enjoys doing this and connecting with the community this way, it does actually help the bottom line. That they'll have people stop in and say, oh, I found your coffee shop on Instagram, or I love watching your videos, what have you. So it is good for business as well.
Mm-hmm. So it's pretty clear along with that. She doesn't just talk about weather on there. In fact, even while we were driving up there, you had found it was a different Instagram reel she put out that kind of garnered more attention. That was just talking about customer service and how her customers are being treated by tourists and such. Like, and so there's more being talked about than just the weather.
Yeah, and this is actually how I found this story. Our business reporter, Brielle Bredston, pointed out when this happened a while back that there was a video from Java Moose that was going viral, that it was part of this weather report series that Sarah Jorgensen Hallberg does, which I had not noticed. There are a lot of amazing social media accounts up here in our region, so I'm not able to follow all of them, and hadn't been following that one, or at least hadn't been, it hadn't cracked my feed very often. But Brielle pointed out that Sarah was sparking a lot of discussion with this video that she posted where she spoke very sort of personally and emotionally. We learned a little bit more about why this was so personal for her. Obviously, she cares about everyone who works at her shop, but it turns out that what sparked this particular video was some rude treatment. It sounds like that is understating it, but let's just say rude treatment of her own son, who at that time was a teenager, was working at the now closed original kiosk location of Java Moose. Their only location now is the permanent one. Anyway, so she said that, Sarah said that an adult customer had just said something pretty unforgivably rude to her young son, who was just, trying to do his best and make the coffee. And so she talked about how this is just not acceptable. And so when you and I talked with her, Wyatt, she explained a little bit more about the challenges of running a business in a tourist community like Grand Marais. And certainly in Duluth, we know these challenges, and Grand Marais, double that dynamic, where you get a super busy season in the summer and then super quiet in the winter. And so as a business owner, you're trying to, figure out how you have a successful business that is going to balance those two extremes. And you have to understand, and, Sarah told us customers have to understand that if you go visit a business like this in the summer, it's not going to be set up to handle the flood of customers like it would if that was happening year round.
July, August, September are very busy on the shore. You will wait in line. You will wait in line everywhere you go. And we're so fortunate that we do have those lines, but they can be long and tiresome. Your expectations can be, maybe they're not met. We're all trying to do the best that we can absolutely do, but it can get challenging. And so making sure that we have the right attitude and that, our visitors also have the right expectations and attitudes coming in. A lot of times in the summer, we have a long line, and they finally get to us like, "You're so busy." And I'm like, "We are, and we have to be. In order to be here in an April day, in a January day, in a November day, we have to be busy during the height of the season."
I can speak to being a witness to the difference of the seasons, versus being there in the non-tourist season. Like, you get a coffee pretty quick. That's usually when I've been able to successfully be able to get a cup of coffee to go coming back from an assignment up there. Versus in the summertime, it's a bit of a longer line. I have not always been able to get my quick cup of coffee to go on the way back. So it just kind of happens sometimes. It's what it is. It's a small community that gets a lot of visitors flooded in the summertime.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of, tourist-facing businesses just close in the winter. They just aren't able to make it happen in the winter, and, that's fair enough. But Java Moose is open year-round, which, the locals who, we talked with said they appreciate. And they said it was kind of touching. They said, they also appreciate when people come in the summer because it includes a lot of regular visitors who they've come to know now for years and decades. It made me think of the way that my family goes to Madeline Island in the Apostle Islands. And, we don't live there. We live in the, most of my family members live in the Twin Cities, but we really feel connected to that community. And so it's kind of cool to hear from a local that they actually know that people who come visit in the summer aren't all just, annoying tourists who have no idea, the value of the community, but actually are part of the community. They love to see them come back. And I talked to another, younger employee, Sarah's niece, is one of the family members who works there. And she said, most of her interactions with customers are very positive. So not to overstate, how negative certain customer behavior can be. It sounds like, by and large, people are great there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm a believer that there's more good customers than bad customers out there. It's just the bad customers are louder. So yeah, good to hear that they're reinforcing that, hey, most customers are great to work with, and hopefully we're one of those.
Yeah. And we know from hearing reader feedback on our stories that there are going to be people who absolutely hate it. They can be a little loud, and, we like to hear all points of view. But yeah, there are certainly a lot of people who, just enjoy the paper and don't say anything, or, just say things less often. We know you all are out there as well. Everybody listening, right?
Yeah. I can't please everybody. everybody. And speaking of not being able to please everybody, our weather, bring it back to weather. The weather can't always please everybody. You know, she's doing these weather reports and has been for years now, but she still doesn't have any particular background in meteorology per se, other than being a Minnesotan. I think she even commented that, like, you know, if you're a Minnesotan, you kind of have to have, it's kind of like a responsibility to be somewhat passionate about the weather, as I feel like, speaking at least for Duluthians, like I feel like we all have a passionate discussion about the weather pretty fast.
Yeah, I think it speaks to this region's fascination with the weather that even in an era when you can pull out your phone and get extremely detailed weather information on any spot, certainly on the globe, maybe even, you know, you say especially within the United States and nearby, it still is valuable to, you know, pull up a video and see a human being standing out in the weather and talking about it. And yeah, so she talked a little bit about, I guess she does, you know, take a little extra responsibility, understanding that she has a platform for her weather info here.
So yes, I have done a little more research, I think, than maybe like the average person has. But I don't forecast anything because I'm not a meteorologist. But I can tell you, the wind's coming out of the west right now. It's bringing us probably down to about 34 degrees, even though it's supposed to be 44. Clouds are rolling in and we might have rain later.
And while we were there, we watched her do weather report. First off, she does it like a pro. Like, she whipped her phone and did it in one take, no problem whatsoever. Like, even sometimes here in the podcast, we have to stop ourselves. Oh, hold on, I fumbled my words there. I got to take that again, you know? But she did it like a pro. She's clearly been doing it for quite a while now. It shows in just how she does it. And you know, she's been managing that now as long with, you know, managing the coffee shop. There's a lot of challenges for both fronts along with that, but it seems like talking to her, like she seems to really enjoy running the social media and also running the coffee shop despite the challenges.
Yeah, I was kind of fascinated to, you know, think about her story, given that she started working at this coffee shop way back, you know, in the 90s when she was, you know, in high school, she said, and it was just the kiosk and her family didn't own it or anything. It was just, you know, her, you know, high school job. And then, you know, her family ends up investing and now, you know, her family are owners and she's running this coffee shop and it's kind of been her whole life. And, you know, I don't know, that's a path that she would have imagined for herself or that anyone necessarily might. Maybe some people at age 13 are like, all I want to do is run a coffee shop. But yeah, she said she has been very, very happy in this life she shares with her extended family.
I'm very grateful that I took that on. Nobody asked me to. That I decided that I would be the ambassador for Grand Marais. No, I'm very grateful that I get to do this every day. I have a very happy job. I get to meet thousands and thousands of amazing people that even if maybe they're not super happy when they walk in the shop, we're able to get them a warm cup of coffee and send them on their way, and maybe they'll be a little bit happier.
Okay, so now taking it back to Grand Marais in general, because as we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, we love Grand Marais. I personally kind of consider it like perhaps an unofficial capital of Northlandia. When I think of Northland, I think of Grand Marais. But what is it about Grand Marais that you think makes it such a perfect setting for these kind of distinctive stories? I know we haven't done a lot up there, but if it wasn't for the distance, I think we would have done more by now, with it being 2+ hours away. And I certainly hope we can do more up there.
Yeah, I was certainly struck to, you know, really look at what the population of Grand Marais is. And under 2,000, it feels like it has a, you know, it looms much larger in our experience of the Northland community. And, you know, earlier I was sort of alluding to, you know, Grand Marais is what you get when you know, get past Duluth and you keep on going. Well, it's true if you go up the lakeshore. You know, I think there are certainly other communities in our region. You look at your Ely's, you know, places on the range, what have you, that are, you know, also kind of, you know, beautiful, more, you know, isolated places. It takes a little bit more of an effort to get there. Then with that comes more adventure. And, you know, certainly there are plenty of other communities that share those qualities. But there is something that Grand Marais has that Ely does not have, that Virginia does not have, not the state nor the city, and that is, well, I'll let Sarah say it in her own words.
I think accessibility to the lake, number one. You are pulling into town and what you see right away is the harbor. And that just pulls at so much of nostalgia and heartstrings for so many people that Grand Marais has a place in their hearts. And I really think it's accessibility to the lake because many of the other communities up and down the shore don't necessarily have that right away, like right in your face. You have to seek it out a little bit more. Grand Marais has always been a welcoming community to all walks of life. It has always been an artistic community, so I think that it spurs people's passion. It's just a really, really great place to be.
You know, one community that I keep thinking of when I visit Grand Marais, and this isn't a perfect comparison, but I think about it a lot. I spent a lot of years out in Boston in college and graduate school there, and I went up the Cape a couple of times. Should have done more, but hindsight is 2020. But anyway, you go up Cape Cod. It's kind of similar to the North Shore. It's this beautiful sort of coastal community, and then you get to the end, and on Cape Cod, that's Provincetown, and on the North Shore in Minnesota, that's Grand Marais. And in both cases, you kind of have this like reward for getting to the end of the road. Not to say that it's about the journey. There are many wonderful places all on the North Shore and all on Cape Cod, but you get to the end and there's a sense that like, yes, this is it. You've reached the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You enjoyed the rainbow, but here's your pot of gold. And it does make for a distinctive community. Also, in both Provincetown and Grand Marais, the arts are very big, have historically been very big, and really fuel a lot of people who want to move there full time, and people who want to visit, rent, vacation, what have you. So there's a lot of similarities there, and just as people are understandably fascinated by and love Provincetown, well, that's kind of what Grand Marais has for our region.
Mm-hmm. And I think Sarah nailed it on the head. There's just something about that lake, that's just. I mean, I grew up in Duluth, so I feel like I've been spoiled with like how grand this lake is. I feel like people who aren't from our region that come up here to see the lake for the first time, it is kind of awe-inspiring, especially when you take it up to. We have a little bit of Duluth, like we're similar to Grand Marais, we're a town on the shore, but we're a bigger town on the shore, a lot more population, bigger buildings, it feels more like a city, versus Grand Marais is like the smaller, condensed version. You get more of that maybe closer connection to the lake than maybe you do in Duluth. I don't know, I feel like that's kind of what always draws me up there, like, oh, that lake, I just kind of want to hang out by it for a while,
Yeah, I think of, movies set in locations much further south, down along the equator where you have, some tall ship sailing and has some adventure out on the sea and then pulls into this cove and it's on some, remote island somewhere, but all of a sudden there's a sort of like beautiful harbor and up around it, rises the walls of maybe it was a volcano or something. And you've got, beautiful vegetation and a beach and all of that. And I mean, Grand Marais, again, is not a tropical setting, but does share some of that sort of sense of wonder and mystery. And you really like, as you say, Wyatt, it's like everything Duluth has. Imagine Grand Marais just sort of condenses it. It's like add water, literally, and you get Duluth.
Mm-hmm. And bringing it back to Java Moose now, like obviously we're to live in Duluth, we can't go to Grand Marais all the time, but like we can kind of sort of get a daily look at Grand Marais through her Instagram reels, so the weather she puts out there, and maybe that's partially what helps why it's gathered the following that it has.
Yeah, I'm going to anticipate one of your questions, Wyatt, which is you often ask, what makes this a Northlandia story? And I think when you think about, why this is an interesting region and why there are so many interesting stories that are told here and why we think they are underappreciated, which is why we have this whole series helping, people to appreciate them, helping ourselves to appreciate them, is on the one hand, you've got this sort of stunning, unique natural landscape. You've got everything from virtual moon rocks, well, that's another episode, to, this, massive lake that people will confuse with an ocean, to, giant open pit mines and underground mines and all of this, just like this fascinating region. But it is geographically isolated, right? You need to invest some time to get up and out here in the Northland. And the people who choose to live here full time, whether that's for just part of their life or their entire life, tend to, have some interesting, things going on. There's some interesting like projects going on, some interesting interests. Anyway, it's not necessarily easy always to make your life up here, and all the more so when you get further up into the Northland like Grand Marais or Ely or what have you. And I think when you look at Sarah's life as you see it through the window of her coffee shop social media account, I think you see that. You see on the one hand, people are struck by the stunning scenery and how changeable the weather is, the extreme seasonal variation from, 80-degree summer days to just about below 80 degrees, if you had in the wind chill there in the winter. So you've got all of that. But then you also have this small business owner who is, working in a place that sometimes gets like absolutely flooded with visitors, and other times there's not a soul to be seen. And you just sort of get a sense of what it's like to balance those extremes and, make a life for yourself and your family up there. And then you get to see that through the Instagram account of this coffee shop. And it's fun too. It's like, she's a private individual, but she also has a coffee shop that you can go to visit. It's fun to, watch her Instagram videos and think, oh boy, I could be standing right there. I could be holding a cup of coffee and, just enjoying the same view or being challenged by these same, weather circumstances if I chose to live in Grand Marais. Maybe someday.
Maybe. All right, Jay. Well, I think we'll wrap up there. I think that was a perfect summary to what we talked about. Thank you so much for joining us here, and it's great to have you back.
Yeah, great to be back, Wyatt. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on this venture into Northlandia. To read the article for this week's column, as well as see photos and video produced by myself, visit DuluthNewsTribune.com/topics/Northlandia. If you enjoy this podcast and would like to support us, consider becoming a subscriber of the Duluth News Tribune at DuluthNewsTribune.com/subscribe. Join us again next time and discover the extraordinary stories that you just might miss if you're not in the right place at the right time, ready to step off the beaten path with no rush to return, here in Northlandia.